This is Ace. We're going to be looking at how do you throw Bo-Shurikens. So this is called a Bo Dashi. It is about 215 grams, so about 8.5 inches long. The point has been optimized for sticking into wood, which is kind of the North American standard, based on knives and stuff like that. You can stick these in a plywood, stumps, all sorts of stuff, whatever it is you're kind of wanting to throw into. Same type of target you'd use as a knife, use for a knife. So the first things that we need to get into is the grips. There's a bunch of different grips. The resident uber mensch on the subject, Matthias Bein from Bo-Shuriken.org, will weigh in with a bunch of stylistic specifics, but I'm here to just teach you how to get you started today. So a couple basics. First one is we go through and we just kind of put our finger there. I find it so it's deep, and I'm just going to point. I'm going to think about pushing into the target and just kind of controlling it. So I'm just throwing at a stump. You can use a pizza box or something like that, some stacked up cardboard, whatever you want. We're just controlling the point as we push into it. Because I'm so close, I don't want to put any power in it, because if these bounce back, they can bounce back in a nasty way. One of the advantages to starting with cardboard versus wood as a target is you kind of really minimize the ricochets, and even putting some cardboard, just stapling it to the front of your target will reduce a lot of your ricochets. So we're just controlling the point with that finger as I'm kind of pushing it in. I want to be pushing on about where the midpoint of the shuriken is as I direct it in. And so we're just lofting these in, trying to figure out where that is. Once we can control the point effectively, then we can start to worry about adding a little bit more. But if we can't control the point, we don't want to add speed and power to this function, because these will come back, and although they may not seem really sharp, they're definitely pointy enough to stick into your foot. So we get to this position and we're just pushing. Right, we're just pushing. Slide it in there, getting that consistent grip. In the beginning, we want to be as up and down with our movement as we can, and just nice and loose and firing this through. The more up and down we are, the more predictable the flight path of this will be, and then the more accurate we can be. And I'm spreading these out because I don't like smacking them into one another. So that's your basic finger push grip. So the next grip we're going to look at is more of a traditional grip, and you can call it a salute grip or like a tortilla grip. I'm going to put the butt of it in my hand, and I'm going to have my finger about where the center of gravity is. I'm going to secure this with my thumb, and I'm going to brush it over, top, and forward the same way as we had before. Again, we're just learning to direct this point. No speed and power, getting it predictable, and finding out what it is we need to do to control this. Some of the Japanese players, when they're doing it longer distances, you'll really see them start to like lob and chuck it. Where myself, because shuriken were used classically at, within 3 meters, I really like a kind of a shoot through the center, kind of a modern approach. So again, we have that salute grip. in here, front fingers about where the center of gravity is. I'm going to wrap this around there, and I'm going to tortilla my hand just like I'm coming around a taco. So now we kind of get into like a hybrid or a modern adaptation of the salute or the tortilla grip, right? Which is the New Yorker grip. Take your driving finger as such, gonna put that in there, about the same, but we're gonna clamp this down on this position. Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit more tension in there, and I'm gonna fire it over top. I'm going to fire it through the center, and we're just going to see how this works. So with this grip, we still want to be up and down. So with the New York grip, as with our standard grip we showed first, we still want to direct with that finger and be up and down. We still want to project at the target and cut through the center. Our finger is going to be just below the center of gravity, and we're going to just control the rotation that way. Again, we're going through and just learning to get our arm to do what we want it to. You can add speed and power later, but especially when we're working this close, you don't need to have a lot of power to get this to stick, and all that'll happen is you'll just have it bounce back and stab you. So again, our New Yorker grip, driving finger, feel about where that is. There you go, right? Kind of lock that in, and you just feel it out. So one of the other grips we can use is take our finger, we run along the side, we slide it in there. I'm going to wrap these over as such. And I'm creating a tube and a guide as this comes out. Okay? So I can be as such, and I just swing it over and I let this get carried forward. Kind of where we start to see an introduction of a wave style and how this works. I'm just creating this tube and letting it go. So with this, we'll tend to be a little bit deeper with the grip. We're not pushing with this much as we're letting it get pulled out. So you want to be a little bit deeper, wrap that in there. This is as such. I don't have a death grip on it. Just let it go. So we're just going to go through and fire this right through the center. Kind of figure out how much tension you want, and you just let it go. And it'll feel like it kind of gets sucked out of your hand. There's a little bit of a knack, a little bit of an art to this one, and it's just a modern type of shuriken grip. Initially, if I find it harder to control, but you'll be able to get a lot more of an arrow type of flight path off this type of a grip. Create that tunnel, So going through and just a slight variation, the one that I tend to, sorry, the version I tend to prefer is instead of my thumb being here, bring my thumb up into this position. It allows me to get a little bit more of a pinch. I'm still wrapped on the bottom and it still comes out, same type of motion. And I find this one, for me, that's more consistent, more accurate, and more controlled. Because of that, I'm able to put out more power, mainly based on confidence. Big things we want to do, we just want to cut through the center, get your grip, and get your arm doing all of the things you want it to do before you worry about power, before you worry about your body movement, your taijutsu, your tai sabaki, whatever you want to call it. Go ahead and just focus on getting the arm and the grip that you like to work for you. Because if your arm does what it's supposed to, the rest of it won't matter that much. Then focus on the arm moving towards the target in a straight line. Or the wrist moving towards the target in a straight line. And if your sidearm, like that was, overhand, or kind of a Japanese sidearm, it all will travel the same as long as your arm does the same thing. So, in this position, we have a little bit more control as far as when that slides in and out. Fingers are still in this, creating that tunnel. So have a longer tunnel. So this last one is a grip that I figured out. I haven't seen it in any type of scrolls. I'm sure other people are doing it. I don't know what it's called. We'll call it a booger hook. So this is here as we were before. But I'm going to pinch my finger. I'm not just curling it up, but I'm actually activating it as I drive this in. Right? I'm creating this push, I'm flexing my hand, and I'm going to shoot this through the center the same way we've been doing the whole time. And I'm getting some really, really interesting results from it. If you know the name, post in the comment below. So again, grabbing as we did with this, what I'm changing So I'm curling that finger, I'm activating it. So when do I start adding power? Well, first thing we need to do after you have a grip that you like is we're just going to go through, make sure that our arm motion is correct, and that we can go through and be consistent. At about 2 meters or so, we want to make sure that just with our arm, we can go through and be pretty consistent so we can control this. All right, and the big thing that we're looking for is directing the point. Because when they ricochet back and you're at this spot, especially off these logs, it can be kind of dangerous. So you're going to want to make sure you're wearing your protection and stuff like that at this point. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to use that cobra style just to break Marcel's balls. Here, send this through. Here, send this through. Nice and slow, send this through. So I'm concerned about where it is accuracy-wise, as well as that I'm controlling the point as I do that. Move back a little further, and my hand is in a straight line towards the target. You notice how I haven't really sped up my hand yet. Forward. So as we get back to about 2.5 meters, 3 meters, somewhere there, we go through and really start to work on that speed. And so there'll be the kind of desire to just keep pushing that distance back. That's fine. But it doesn't mean that there's not usefulness in going through and just coming in tight and working on this accuracy. You can do your walk back. As well as a walk forward. Perhaps you want to throw bladed, stand in that type of orientation. An easy way that you can go through and add weight to this is, I refer to it as a teapot. Right, so your arm's doing everything you need it to, your hand's doing everything you need it to, you've decided on your grip. Remember, it's here, look back, fire through. Look back, fire through. Look back, fire through. And just as we did with the Cobra, when we're facing forward, we're not really worried about getting my hand moving fast at this point, just going through and getting my body and my hand to work together. And you're going to feel silly doing this. You're going to feel absolutely retarded. It looks retarded, but this is just a drill. As you get a little bit further back, and we have more confidence, increase the speed of the hand. That's okay. These are just drills, and they're just teaching you how to transfer power. Get your body and your arm to work the same way. So next up, and the final one we're going to talk about, is just like a shot put. I'm going to drive off my rear foot as I'm doing this. I'm going to be in this position. I'll start bladed initially, and I'm going to transfer my weight into my rear foot and load my hand. Take a small step towards. Small step towards. Small step towards. Again, I'm not moving my hand fast. Initially, I'm focusing on just syncing up my hand and my body to work the same. I feel this weight transfer, I shift this forward. I feel this weight transfer, I shift forward. I feel this weight transfer, shift forward. Now, right now, I'm doing this bladed. I'm keeping this kind of concealed, and I'm firing through. Right? Load, fire. Load, fire. I can just as easily do this facing forward in this type of position. My load is here, step forward. My load is here, step forward. Kind of combining it with that cobra. Hit the back of the other shuriken there. So yeah, we can move forward and straight into it, but I can also be moving offline. We can combine all of these things, and I can actually push off from that bladed position, moving forward. Push off from this bladed position, moving forward. And offline each time. That's okay too. In this bladed position, step offline. Bladed position, step offline. Bladed position, step offline. So in closing, you have several different grips. Experiment with them, find out the one that works for your hand, works for your body. Whether you want to go through and use like a push style, if you want to go through and use a push to try to direct it in there, or you want to go through and use more of a wave, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be whatever you like and what suits you. My suggestion is that you pick one type of movement, one type of grip, and start with it, right? So I like wave techniques. That's just what I fancy. And so I tend to focus on that. They are more difficult to learn initially than the push method. And it's always nice to just start with getting those easy victories. Once you're consistent at 1.5 meters, 2 meters, just with your arm, with the same grip, same mechanics, you go through and start adding power. So whatever that looks like, if you want to push, if you want to go through and use a Booger Hook hybrid, right? If you want to go through and use the New Yorker, whatever that is, just pick the grip and then we start. So once we've gone through and we've decided on that grip, right, we start moving back and throwing through. We pick one set of mechanics and we work it. All right, once you go through and you can get like decent, as an example, throwing bladed, and you're consistent and you're over the top and that works for you, great. Then go back, slow it down, and look at adding another type of force mechanics, right? Squaring it up, add that cobra. And you wind up going through and just finding out how this works. There's going to be certain techniques that make sense for you, certain ones that don't, and that's okay. Biggest thing is get good at one thing and work on that. When you're first learning, I really like these Bo Dashis. They're easy to learn on. You can do lots of different throws with them. They stick well, they're really forgiving, and they're fairly durable. They're also really easy to find when you have deflections in the grass because they're bigger. Smaller shurikens are more difficult to find, especially when they're black. You go through, make it happen, and you'll have that transition from a knife to a shuriken, or in this case, it could be from a shuriken to a knife. But work these mechanics, work with one object over and over so that you know how that's going to behave, and you get really good at throwing and troubleshooting this one thing. Things that you'll start to see happen is the shuriken will start to hit sideways on the target. Typically that's because you're coming over instead of straight through. If you wind up seeing your shuriken landing and curving like this, it means that you're going sidearm, and you can address that by just coming back, making sure that you're over the top. There's nothing wrong with warming up at the shorter distances. Typically where you start seeing that sidearm happening is because you're at a distance that's a little beyond what you're comfortable with. And so we want to go through and prevent you from winging it, using those body mechanics and just trusting it. And all that takes to build the trust is the reps. And then as you get better and more confident, you'll have better and better luck. The most important thing with all of this is that you have fun. Hope this helps. We'll have some more videos with the Ubermensch of Bo-Shuriken Matthias Bind. He'll be going through and getting into some of the traditional stuff and the history and different designs, different grips, different mechanics from some of the different schools. Anyway, stay tuned, and if you're interested in some Bo Dashis to learn on, I'll put a link below.